All this while, we have been focusing on giving information, famously called in Hindi Gyan. I think it's now time for us to pivot to talking about the nuances of the various cases that get filed during the litigation journey. There was one instance where 80 odd cases were filed by both the parties, which left the Honorable Supreme Court no choice but to go ahead and use its superpower under Article 142 and dismiss the marriage. Now, we aren't going to talk about the 80 cases that they have filed because that would mean that we'll all become old uh, and we do not have so much of time. But we are going to talk about a very important topic, which most lawyers and most people think is the strongest weapon to win cases, which is the domestic violence case. The domestic violence case itself is a very important aspect for anybody and everybody to understand. And as you see, we have a list of people joining today on this forum, some young, some bright, some light people, talking about each and every aspect. And we thought, what better than having the Gen Zs on the call, making it more debatable, roundtable conference.
Let's dive in without further ado, the paradigm of domestic violence. So first of all, let's start with women. What are the challenges faced by women in domestic violence matters? What are their legal repercussions and what are their remedies? So I think I would invite Deepak to talk about this topic in depth.
Hello. Thank you, sir. I want to start with definition, but I want to start with a reality. Somewhere in India last night, a woman went to sleep after being insulted, threatened, or even beaten, but not by any stranger, but by someone she trusted the most. And today, she will wake up and continue as if nothing happened. Because that is what many women in India are taught to endure, not to escape. We often think domestic violence are rare, but the data tells us a very different story. The National Family Health Survey reveals that about 30% of married women between the age of 19 to 47 have experienced spousal violence. That is not a smaller number. It's not an exception. That is a pattern. When we look at the NCRB report, cruelty by husband or relatives constantly ranks as the highest reported crimes against the women, with above 1.3 lakh cases every year. But even these numbers are incomplete. Behind every reported cases, there are countless untold stories. Stories buried under silence and social pressure. Many women don't even report violence. The question we must ask ourselves today is not just do laws exist, but do women feel safe enough to use them? Yes, we have legal protection. Yes, we have rights on paper, but reality doesn't change until mindset change. As I represent the perspective of women today, I'm not here to accuse. I'm here to acknowledge a truth that we often avoid. Domestic violence is not just a woman's issue; it's a societal failure. And until we stop normalizing suffering inside home, no law will ever be strong enough because dignity, respect, and safety should not begin outside the home. It should be begin within the house.
I would also like to throw some light on the legal provisions that are involved in domestic violence matters. So there is 498A of IPC, which covers cruelty by husband or his relatives. Then, there is specific statute for dowry harassment. There is specific statute for prevention of domestic violence against women. So that act is there, IPC is there, and dowry protection is there in case of women. There are various Supreme Court judgments, settlement of law, everything is there. We'll discuss it in much depth. But before that, since Deepak talked about women's issues and challenges, and he summarized it in his perspective. But I would also invite at this point Ms. Christie to talk about the challenges faced by men and their relatives in domestic violence cases.
Thank you. So I would like to add something from a slightly different angle. When we hear about domestic violence, we usually imagine women as a victim. And that is absolutely valid. But abuse is about power and control, not just about gender. So the question is, can men be a victim? Research in India showed that over 50% of men have experienced some form of domestic abuse at least once. So clearly it exists. but we don't talk about it. So, and in many cases, it's not just physical, it's emotional. Constant criticism, humiliation, and manipulation. No visible injuries, but serious mental impact. And because it is not visible, it often ignored. Then comes social stigma. If a man speak up, he not taken seriously. Sometimes even mocked. कि यार इसके साथ ऐसे थोड़ी हो सकता है. So the most men choose silence, and that's why this issue remain invisible. There's also a sensitive aspect, misuse of law, like Section 498A of the Indian Penal Code, which is now Section 85 and 86 of Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. Now, these laws are extremely important to protect women, no doubt about that. But even the Supreme Court of India has acknowledged that misuse can happen in some cases. So the conversation should be about balance, not denial. And sometimes the consequences go much deeper. We have seen cases like Atul Subhash, where mental pressure and legal stress become overwhelming. And now cases doesn't define everything, but it shows that this situation can have serious real life consequences. There is also a legal gap under the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act 2005. Only women are recognized as a victim. So men don't really have the same direct protection. And even the child custody, it is not about losing a case. Sometimes it feels like losing everyday moment with your child. I just want to clarify that this is not about taking away women's experiences. Women face some serious domestic violence and strong protection is absolutely necessary. It is simply about acknowledging that abuse can exist in different forms. I'm not trying to change the narrative, but I'm trying to complete it.
Very well said, Srishti. You touched upon some really sensitive and important points. Like, for example, in 498A, I was thinking, it is a non-bailable offense. The moment a complaint is there is a threat that loom the husband and his family about arrest. Supreme Court dealt with this question in Arnesh Kumar's judgment, a very famous judgment, where they said that the police cannot blindly arrest whenever there is a complaint. So there is some sort of balancing act that is desired and is recognized, and the courts are nowadays getting sensitized about it as well. So there is a lot of harassment because of these statutes. It has to be stopped because to implement the law fully, it has to manage the extremities because there is a lot of misuse that happens as well. Moving ahead, I would like Lavanya to cover some of the legal points that we might have missed before we open the floor for discussion.
Thank you. Before coming to the legal points, I want to talk about another two of the issues that are spoken about when we talk about domestic violence. Children who grow up in a household where there's a prevalence of domestic violence, they are not merely bystanders. We can't say they are participants either, but they are deeply involved in it. And it has been like there has been research on this thing that how a domestic violence environment impacts on a child's brain. And and it has been noticed that children who grow up in an environment which is not really suitable, which is not really lovable, where they don't get to see a loving environment, that there are significant changes in their brain development. They grow up with anxiety, they have PTSD, depression, and they go through a multiple levels of mental trauma. When we look at children who are involved in it, there are court cases and talks, and so we can't say that the children are outside of it. And we can say that the children are used within it rather than just being a bystander. When their parents are fighting, the children are used. The child tries very hard to find a balance between both the parents, but it's very difficult to do. Then comes the case of the custody, and it's not a really good impact on the child when the child is taken to the court and fought for, and he has to choose between a mother and a father. Alienation happens with either of the parents, and the child is alienated from a lot of things. Maybe the child has no role in creating the conflict, but the child does bear the consequences of the conflict. This is one thing that is not really talked about when we talk about domestic violence. Another one of the thing that is rarely mentioned is domestic violence within the LGBTQ plus community. It is almost entirely invisible. I mean, whenever we talk about this community, We talk something that only affects a small number of people, but that is in itself a concern. B- Uh, the law, although there was a landmark judgment in 2018 where the law decriminalized same-sex relationships, and it was a huge judgment. But in spite of that, there is no relief for the people who are suffering in relationships. And when we talk about the LGBTQ community, it's not just the relationships they might face domestic violence in. So when we talk about domestic violence is any form of abuse that happens within a domestic household, right? So the abuse these people face is within their household, in the family. As in, if they are interested in the same sex, they are subjected forcefully into conversions, and they are beaten up for it, given those sorts of treatments, which is completely not right. And it hampers their mental health a lot. So this is one of the very intimate, and familial level of violence that they have to face. The brothers or the fathers or the men in the family beat up the men. If the man turns out to be a gay man, or if the woman turns out to be a lesbian woman, they are beaten up for it for no reason. The major act that exists for domestic violence in India is the Protection of Women Against Domestic Violence Act. And the people from LGBTQ community, they cannot um, ask for any kind of protection under this act or any other act. And the worst part is, even if they ask for protection under the basic provisions that exist in the IPC, they are not taken seriously. That is the biggest gap in our law. They are given full protection under Articles 14, 15, 19 of the Constitution, which guarantees us the basic rights and the dignity to live as a human. But I feel that exists only on paper. It does not exist in practice, and that is one of the biggest issues. It's not talked about much. There is police hostility, there is mockery, there is victimization of the person. So if the person is going for his grievances, he's re-victimized, he's not taken seriously.
Law
Yes.
and society go hand in hand. Now, coming back to you, what are some of the issues that you observe in your interactions with people from society? What does your experience has been?
I think what has happened, marriage as an institution has changed. I feel, and I'm more speaking on behalf of a man now, I feel there will be time when men will be scared of marriages. Simply because uh, the way it has been taught today is that women has a lot of leverage of filing multiple cases, multiple suits. The tendency is to tell that the law only favors the women, which absolutely is not the case. But it's just the representation of understanding of the law that makes it feel like it is biased, or if a certain case goes in your favor, you say law is uh, uh, great, and if it goes against you, you say then law is biased, right? We tend to change the narrative based on how it impacts or affects us. Uh, but I think most important thing we have been saying from day one, right? Litigation is not the way to take things forward. Mediation is. There's no point fighting plethora of cases. Like the way you got married through a common connect, common friend, love marriage, whatever you say, you also should maturely decide to part ways and not pile plethora of cases, be it the domestic violence 498 or whatever, and so on. Doesn't help. It impacts you, your family, the children, and people around you, your relationships.
Given the volume of cases that our courts are dealing with on a daily basis, and given the lifestyle that we have adopted and the challenging job, challenging society, if considering everything, I think the best possible solution for now is to be mature. But if we go circle back to the core issue of domestic violence, so society wise, what do you guys think should change? But I would like to listen to your thoughts because you guys are young. So tell me, what are the changes that we as society can bring to remedy this framework of both domestic violence and the misuse of domestic violence laws?
Before discussing what the changes that should be brought in the society should be, I would like to ask a question to the panel. Do men really need the same amount of protection that the women in our country need?
It's not about asking for protection. It's about the trauma when a domestic violence is filed from the other party without even grind to it, without any ground to it, it itself becomes a trauma.
Do you think it
That's
will
my
help if we make the prevention of protection of women from domestic violence act more gender neutral? Like if we change the definitions, because men can also be domestically abused or traumatized. So will that help?
penalize if proven wrong. If a false domestic violence case has been filed and the case has been quashed or not proven, the party who is filing the case should be criminalized or should be taken for tax so that people hesitate before filing such false cases.
Yes, sir. I totally agree with what Ashok sir said. To answer your question, to bring a change in the PWDVA Act, I don't think would be a right way to do it to bring out the penalization, because when the act was formed, it was formed for very different reasons. To make this act gender neutral would defy the reasons it was created for. Instead of making changes in this act, we can make the changes in the other areas. Don't you think, Deepak?
Yes, no legal system is misuse proof, but we don't remove laws because of misuse. We improve how they are implemented. The same principle should apply here also. Because I know false cases are very serious issue, but they should be handled carefully without weakening the protection of genuine victims.
Because when a law is tested, it has to be tested on both extremities. So the genuine people should not suffer. I would like to push back a little bit more on that, because this domestic violence, as you rightly said, it can happen to anyone. It can be pronounced even in case of LGBT communities. So if we make it gender neutral and more inclusive, it will give protection to both sides, and the equality will give more confidence in the legal system as well, isn't it? The way society is changing, it has to be incorporated in the law as well, in the code as well, right? Christie, do you want to add anything to this?
Yes, sir.
बोलिए.
सर आई थिंक प्रोटेक्शन की बात कर रहा हूँ, और जो फॉल्स एलिगेशन जैसा अशोक सर ने बोला कि पेनाल्टी लगनी चाहिए जो 498 में फॉल्स एलिगेशन लगते हैं, आई थिंक मैं उस चीज से वो करती हूँ, क्या बोलते एग्री करती हूँ कि हाँ ये चीज होनी चाहिए. For custody of a child, the court should allow the share parenting concept.
The word child custody, the trauma on the child gets me a little emotional. This is not something which is only happening with me, but it's happening with every man on this planet. You get visitation, but you don't get to see the child. You go to the court, file for a contempt, nothing happens. You take the order to the police says the order does not say take help from police to get the visitation. And then you have visitation denied for long, and still nothing happens. Nobody gets penalized. And that makes me feel annoyed, angry, frustrated, but sympathize on myself as a tax-paying citizen of India who doesn't get to see good roads, doesn't get any amenities from the government. At the same time, the court order which has been passed in his favor is not implemented by the other party. And what happens to the other party? Nothing. Nothing. You are left with what? Filing an execution, filing in contempt, and then look at how the system is, right? Takes ages to issue. In the world of social media networks, Gmails, WhatsApp, and everything else, the postal process takes ages for it to reach the other party, which becomes a reason for them to not appear. Why even listen, waste time, or spend time? So, as a common man who has started to learn law a little bit, because they say little knowledge is dangerous, I have a lot of questions in my mind saying, where do I actually go to get justice done? or will justice ever be done? But that's a topic for another day. I can go on and make this long weekend the longest weekend by just talking about it, but I think I should pause.
See, sir, when people are suffering, ideally the state should come to the rescue. But as it is flowing from our discussion that the state is failing and the systems are failing, systems are not adequate at this moment to tackle this problem, which is traumatizing both husband and wife, and the children are also immensely suffering. तो सिस्टम इम्प्रूव होना चाहिए और वो होगा धीरे धीरे. What all things we can do so that at least our coming generations or our future is a little bit better. उसके बारे में मैं जानना चाहता हूँ. So I will begin with Lavanya. Yes.
I think the first thing that we can do is empathize. Creating empathy, talking about our problems, because women's problems are very much well known and well discussed, and this awareness is very widespread. But the men's perspective, especially from the emotional angle, is not very much shared because men find it a little difficult to share their private emotions, personal emotions. But I feel it should be shared so that more people can connect with it. And the more people connect with it, the more people will get to know what is actually happening. This will create an empathetic environment, which would make things easier, even though there are both creative. In practice, it's failing. Substantially, it's very difficult to bring that change in just a short amount of time. But I think the first step we can take towards an actual change is empathizing with the people and trying to understand what they are going through, and not just dismissing them, and wanting to help them to provide some kind of relief. I think that would be a really good thing.
So discussion and empathy, open talk and empathy can help. That culture can be inculcated in society. Deepak, what do you think?
Yes, sir. I feel the same. हमने जो बोला जो भी प्रॉब्लम है फ्रॉम द मेन साइड या वुमेन साइड, उसको पब्लिक में आना चाहिए. हम सबको मिलकर उस चीज को ज्यादा प्रमोट करना चाहिए, अपनी बात को शेयर कर पाए हम. समटाइम्स यही
मुझे
होता है
लगता है
कि
कि
हम
ना
अपने प्रॉब्लम्स को बोल नहीं पाते हैं.
yes. मुझे लगता है कि it should be in schools as well about issues of domestic violence, how being more empathetic and open to the partner. These things should be taught at grassroots level in
Yeah,
schools, in colleges.
The kind of violence that women face, I feel, is different from the kind of violence that men face. The kind of violence that women face is more physical. Of course, it has a huge emotional impact as well, but it's mostly physical. The kind of violence that women face is different from the kind of abuse that men face, because men generally face more emotional and mental abuse. So, what I feel is that focusing on these two issues should have two different strategies rather than accumulating them under one umbrella and having one basic provision for both of them.
There is a change in the narrative that the society has been seeing. We always used to say that men don't cry, they have to be strong, they are the bread earners of the society, and so on and so forth. Talking about your problems with somebody who is non-biased and is willing to listen to you and not judge you for whatever you're going to say has been a big helping hand. Also, I think the word empathy is a very powerful statement in this state of life, right? They not only need empathy from the family, the friends, they also need empathy from the judicial system, because seeking empathy or expecting empathy from the other party is no more prevalent, because if that would have been in the equation, we would not have been talking about the cases. So I think in India, the biggest problem is that, and like we have been saying, that we have tried to become Western in our culture. People abroad they fear jumping signals, forget about not abiding by the court law, right? It's slowly changing in India because the fines have increased. I assume there will be a time when people will take judicial orders very seriously, or filing of false cases very seriously. And this can only happen when there are enforcements. That's the only way to operate.
And also, apart from enforcements and legal bite in our statutes, we should, as society, discuss and push our legal system as well, right? If the state is failing, then we should at least provide some assistance as society, right? Like in BNS, when the BNS was being made, there was a golden opportunity, I think, to make it more gender neutral. 498A thing more gender neutral. But at that time, it was missed, and the same thing was copy pasted in BNS from IPC. And also mediation, a very powerful tool, should be used because we have been advocating for mediation throughout this series. But in these kind of cases, when the seriousness is strong and there might be violence, actual violence.
The whole discussion made me have a question in my mind. We are talking about having some changes in the system, and I totally agree with it. We are talking about how the legal system should be more empathetic, how the judges should be more empathetic, how the things should be taken seriously. Of course, it should be taken very seriously. When we talk about empathy, um, at the bottom of the day, we are all humans, right? And let's say I am in the police department, or maybe I'm working with a judge or something, and every day I'm dealing with the same kind of cases. I'm dealing with heinous crimes. I'm dealing with different kinds of people who more or less have the same kind of case. After a certain point, people develop immunity towards all of these things, because if you become empathetic to every little person, it would take on your mind, on your personal life, because after all, this is what a person is doing is their job. And when we talk about a country like India, which has such a diverse and vast amount of population, these cases are very much like every minute there are like hundreds of cases, which is why I understand why people develop a certain kind of immunity towards all of these incidences. But I don't understand how to tackle this problem.
See, Lavanya, humans can develop some sort of strain hardness or immunity, but the system should not develop that immunity. That is the question. At system level, we should incorporate that empathy so that becomes a rule rather than just burden of an individual or the judge sitting there. The only way out is to systemize it, to inculcate that culture into the system.
I feel in my profession also, right? When you do the same thing again, you tend to get a little bored, right? And say how long will I keep doing the same things? But please understand, the moment it's a legal process involved, it's about human. And India probably, and I can bet India probably is the only country where life does not matter. A person to cross a road does not have a footpath. A person to come home does not get a road. Why? Because we have accepted it. The chalta hai attitude is the one which is killing us. A lot of people say Gujarat is a great place to live. But I'll tell you from all my friends that I've heard, Gujarat is a great place to live because people in Gujarat pushed the government to make things happen. Now, if there are plethora of cases, hire more judges. If there are plethora of cases, have more lawyers. The courts are not able to handle situations, then make the mediation center more powerful, saying no divorce cases, no domestic violence cases in a matrimonial dispute will come to the court. They have to be settled in the mediation center. But you cannot run away from the responsibilities and the duties that you have. Why have you introduced the process of divorce itself? Do you say that during marriage you have to come to the court and file a written argument? Both the parties should argue saying why they should get married? Then why are you asking somebody to come to the court for divorce? Right? Then I am saying, if you say divorce, dowry is a crime, then why is alimony not a crime? If you say bharan poshan is what is needed, then that can be done through maintenance. Why are you sitting and deciding alimony? Why do I need to go to you to get a divorce decree? There are a lot of questions that can be raised in the ecosystem itself. But that doesn't take away the responsibility of the judiciary to take the right judgment, make mediation centers more powerful, change family court to, may say, family reconciliation court, or say we are not intervening in the divorce cases. There's a lot that can be challenged. I think we all need to do away with the chalta hai attitude and fight it back.
That is very important. So the biggest takeaway from this discussion is, like, if you have been suffering from a domestic violence case, or if you have been involved in the case, be mature about it, educate yourself about the legal provisions, try to settle the matter, try to have a progressive outlook. Okay. You have to be sensitive and empathetic about it. Educate yourself, your spouse, your children, everyone about how to handle this in a mature manner.
I would just summarize to whatever you have said, right?
Yeah, before that, I would say a few lines.
Yes.
तो हदों के साथ ये धोखा हुआ है, हदों के साथ ये धोखा हुआ है, वो घर में भी हो सकता था अपने, कचहरी में जो समझौता हुआ है.
Wow. Well said. Well said. And I will just summarize to what you have said with the Sayari that you have done is when you decide to move away, don't litigate. If you by default have gone into litigation, solve it by mediation. If mediation has not given the result that you wanted, don't give up, fight, know your rights.
Okay,
Yes.
so with that, we would like to conclude this discussion. I had a great discussion. Thank you so much, panel, for coming to this YouTube channel.